Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today. We are going to expose this crazy, invisible psychological force that is constantly shaping our everyday decisions, our beliefs, and literally even our identities. It's a force so subtle and powerful that most of the time you don't even realize it's pulling the strings. I am, of course, talking about the psychology of conformity. I mean, think about it. Have you ever suddenly decided you liked a band's music just because literally all your friends did? Or maybe you caught yourself laughing at a joke you didn't quite get simply because the rest of the room was cracking up? Well, don't worry, you are absolutely not alone here. This is just human nature in action. So let's dive into this and decode exactly why we do what we do. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover the basics of conformity, Ash's famous line experiment, situational factors, individual factors, and wrap up with culture and age. And hey, if you're a GCSE Edexcel Psychology student using this explainer for your revision, you are in the exact right place. We're going to hit all the key terms and studies you need for your exams. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the basics of conformity. Getting a grip on this vocabulary is absolutely crucial. So what actually is conformity? At its core, it's majority influence. It's when we just go along with the crowd, shifting our behavior or our beliefs to match the group. But what's really fascinating here is the why. Why do we do it? Well, there are two main drivers. First up is normative social influence. This is when we go along with the group simply because we want to fit in and be liked. It's like pretending to love that band your friends won't stop talking about. Second, we have informational social influence. This kicks in when we're in a new or weird situation and we genuinely just don't know how to act. So we look around at the group for the right answers, basically assuming, hey, they probably know better than I do. Now, conformity doesn't just happen in one single way. There are actually three distinct levels to this. First is compliance. This one's pretty superficial. You go along with the group out loud, but deep down inside, you completely disagree. Then there's internalization. This one goes way deeper. You go along with the group and it actually shifts your attitude completely. You change internally and permanently. And finally, identification. This is more of a temporary behavioral change. You act a certain way when you're hanging out with a specific group of friends, but the second you're alone or with a different crowd, you just snap right back to your normal self. Let's move into Section 2, Ash's famous line experiment from 1950. This study is legendary because it brings all those theories we just talked about right to life. Okay, picture this setup. It's so clever. A real participant walks into a room and sits down at a table with a group of other people. But here's the secret. What the participant doesn't know is that everyone else at that table is a confederate, basically an actor secretly working for the experimenter. So the experimenter shows the group a card with 3 lines on it, labeled A, B, and C, and then shows them a single target line. The task is incredibly easy. Just say which line, A, B, or C, matches the target line. They go around the table answering out loud. But here's the catch. The actors purposely and super confidently pick the completely obvious wrong line right before it's the real participant's turn to speak. And the results? They brilliantly illustrate the immense, crushing pressure of the crowd. When there was just one actor in the room giving the wrong answer, the real participant conformed and gave the wrong answer only 13% of the time. But when Ash bumped that up to 3 actors, all unanimously lying together, the conformity rate skyrocketed to 32%. No way, right? Nearly a third of the time, people literally denied the clear evidence of their own eyes just to fit in with 3 total strangers. Which brings us right to Section 3, situational factors. Why did that rate jump so dramatically? Well, it's all about the environment you're in. If you are revising right now, lock this acronym into your brain. SUT. Size, unanimity, task. First, the size of the majority. Conformity goes up as the group gets bigger. But Ash actually found it peaks at about 3 to 4 people. If you add more than that, participants start getting a little suspicious. Second, unanimity. This is a massive one. If everyone in the majority agrees, conformity is super likely. But Ash found that if even one single actor broke ranks and gave the correct answer, the whole spell was broken. The real participants' conformity dropped like a stone. And the T in SUT? That stands for task difficulty. Ash proved that when he made those lines much closer in length, basically making the task tricky and ambiguous, conformity went way up. And this links perfectly back to what we learned earlier. When the task is hard, we start doubting ourselves, we look to others for the right answer, which triggers that informational social influence. We conform because we genuinely think, well, the crowd must know something I don't. All right, shifting gears to Section 4, individual factors. We know the environment matters, but what about the person? Why do some of us cave to the crowd while others can just stand their ground? A huge piece of this puzzle comes down to personality, specifically something psychologists call our locus of control. Think of this as how much power you feel you have over your own life. If you have an internal locus of control, you believe you are in the driver's seat. You control your own behavior, your own destiny. But if you have an external locus of control, you feel like outside factors, luck, or other people are pulling the strings. Because of that, someone with an external locus of control is way more likely to conform, simply because they're already naturally wired to let their surroundings influence them. Now, what about gender? For a long time, early psychology research was confidently claiming that females were just naturally more conformist than males. But a fascinating study in 1971 by Sistrunk and McDavid completely busted this myth. They realized those early tests were terribly flawed. They were using tasks biased heavily towards male interests, so they changed it up. They tested participants on stereotypically male items like mechanics tools, stereotypically female items like sewing equipment, and neutral items like rock stars. The results were wild. Males conformed way more on the female items, females conformed way more on the male items, and on the neutral items, conformity was exactly equal. So the big takeaway here is that it was never about gender at all. It was all about familiarity and confidence. Basically, when you don't know the topic, you conform. Let's zoom out for our fifth and final section, culture and age. This invisible force doesn't just shift based on the room you're in. It heavily depends on the society you live in and where you're at in your life. To put this into perspective, a massive meta-analysis done by Smith and Bond in 1998 looked at conformity all over the world. They found that in individualist cultures, places like the UK or the US, where standing out and personal achievement are really celebrated, conformity averaged around 25%. Failing to conform is actually seen as a strength there. But in collectivist cultures, which place a huge priority on the goals of the group and keeping social harmony, conformity averaged a much higher 37%. In those societies, going against the grain isn't seen as brave. It's often viewed as pretty deviant behavior. But hey, a quick caveat. We've got to be really careful here. Cultures are absolutely not these rigid, homogeneous blocks. You just can't paint entire nations with a single brush. Within any given culture, you're going to find massive individual differences, exactly like Ash saw in his original experiments. Plus, every society is packed with thousands of unique subcultures, ethnic groupings, and social classes, all carrying their own complex, unwritten rules about when to blend in and when to stand out. Finally, let's talk about age. Psychologists used to think age and conformity were just about social status. But a massive 2007 study by Steinberg and Monahan, looking at over 3,600 people, found something amazing. They discovered that conformity actually peaks right at the start of adolescence, between 10 and 14 years old. But then, fascinatingly, it drops off between 14 and 18. Middle adolescence is essentially this intense battleground. It's that critical developmental window where we finally figure out how to resist peer pressure and build the actual capacity to stand up for what we truly believe in. And that is a wrap on our explainer. We've mapped out the basics, Ash's incredible experiments, the SUT situational factors, locus of control, and the whole cultural landscape of conformity. So think about your own life for a second. Do you lean toward an internal or an external locus of control? And the next time you find yourself nodding along with the group, ask yourself, are you doing it because you actually agree, or are you just yielding to the invisible force of the crowd? Keep questioning, keep learning, and hey, best of luck with your revision.